Today, it has become impossible to get bored. We watch movies while scrolling through Twitter, listen to podcasts while exercising. There are even TikToks within TikToks so that our attention does not stray from the screen. But dedicating time to something non-productive is a source of creativity. It is a positive thing if it is controlled. In fact, it has been proven that the best ideas come in periods of lower cognitive effort. Archimedes saw the eureka while taking a bath, and Newton discovered the theory of gravity by observing a tree. So how did we get here? Why can we be bored in peace? How can we enjoy our own company again so we can think again? I would love to start this video by saying that I am oblivious to all this, but that is not the case. I am also a victim of this technocratic trap in which we live. The truth is that this inability to be in the present moment without being distracted raises many problems that threaten us as human beings. We lose the ability to think, creative potential or critical thinking. We forget our humanity in favor of an algorithm that drives us crazy. So is boredom something innate to human beings, or is it an invention that the modern society has brought? There are many pieces to put in this puzzle, and that is what we are going to try to do in this video. It may seem tempting to start looking for blame. Some of them might be the wrong view we have about dopamine, the decrease in our attention span, and above all, a serious evolutionary failure. We will analyze all of these arguments later, because to determine the reasons for a problem, we must first define the problem itself. According to the right, boredom is the tiredness of the mood caused by a lack of stimulation or distraction, or by repeated annoyance. Boredom is having nothing to do. It is looking around and not finding anything attractive enough to pour all your time into. But of course, today it is impossible to get bored. If you can find anything to entertain yourself, you take out your phone, watch some TikToks, and that is it. You forget about everything for a moment. But this definition is extremely simple and has even become outdated in modern times. The truth is that there are different types of boredom, and Heidegger already dared to define them in the 20th century. There is a first type of intrinsic and temporary boredom, something that can be solved, for example, by watching TikTok for a while. But there is a second, much more worrying type, an existential tedium that is very difficult to solve with temporary technological stimuli, and of the second, we are experiencing a pandemic. Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, the Mexican poet and nun, knew boredom very well. In the convent where she lived, she was forbidden to read and write, and she was forced to confine herself to the kitchen. Until then, her greatest entertainment had been writing, and now she couldn't do it. So there, in the heat of the kitchen, Sor Juana Inés entertained herself with her own mind. That is why she stated in a letter to her friend sister Philotea, if Aristotle had cooked, he would have thought more and better. Well, if Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz had given a cell phone with TikTok installed, she probably would have been much less bored in the kitchen, but she would not have given us such poems. Heidegger talked about how states of mind such as boredom, anguish, and serenity open a whole horizon of human possibilities. The poems of Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz were precisely born from these states of mind. And now, what do I do? She would probably wander between the kitchen stoves, something we ask ourselves every day when we can't find anything to do. It seems that we have all the time in the world, but ironically, we don't know what to do with so much time. Falling into boredom. Then it is very simple. Take out your cell phone and distract yourself with social media. This is a temporary solution for a specific moment, but its continued use ends up leading us to existential boredom, a heavy and dense tedium. What I am describing is not laziness, but a state of dissatisfaction with a certain guilt. Bertrand Russell said that we are less bored than our ancestors, but we are much more afraid of boredom. This state of existential waiting has always existed, but modern boredom is a phenomenon that has worsened in recent times. On the one hand, perhaps it could be due to the increases in well-being, and on the other, due to the growth of technology. Juvenal said, "To the people bread and circuses." Bread symbolizes people's most basic needs, but once these are satisfied, they have to be given entertainment so they don't get bored, like the circus. Either way, boredom is the unequivocal symptom of a sick society. The bored distance himself from the world. He stops being interested in things, and the more bored we become, the more we are left alone with ourselves. And where do we run when we are bored? Towards instant gratification and the endless speed of the algorithm. And there we fall into the trap of a problem that puts our purest humanity at risk. Surely you have heard about dopamine detox. Gurus and influencers will tell you about this technique to rebalance your attention levels. That if you put aside your cell phone for a while, you will be able to adjust your dopamine levels and live happily again. But it is not that simple, and this is the wrong view we have of dopamine. Dopamine is not released as a pleasure hormone, but as a preview of the result we can potentially obtain. And this misconception may be one of the main reasons that has brought us here. A conception furthermore responsible for a serious evolutionary failure in human beings. Imagine that every time you press a button, they give you a plate of delicious macaroni, so the anticipation preceding the action of pressing the button will generate dopamine before receiving the plate of macaroni. That is, dopamine is released when you see the button because you know that it precedes a delicious plate of macaroni. Now imagine that instead of receiving a plate of macaroni, you begin to receive completely by surprise an ice cream much more appetizing than macaroni. Your dopamine levels will rise due to the surprise factor before falling back to the same levels generated by the macaroni. But if you suddenly go back to getting the macaroni instead of the ice cream, your dopamine levels will drop even more. If dopamine were released at the time of reward, you would get higher levels of neurotransmitter in ice cream than in macaroni. But that is not how it works, as is released in anticipation of the outcome. After a while, the plate of macaroni would not be able to generate dopamine at the same levels as before, because this would have become the normal, the status quo. Dopamine has nothing to do with the value of the prize or the result, but rather with your default state, with what you consider normal. Dopamine acts on the anticipation of the reward. It is what leads us to press the button, so to speak. Macaroni was fine until you saw that you could have ice cream. And now imagine that you go for a walk every day. That means something much more attractive compared to the default state of doing nothing. Then that walk or the signal that triggers that walk will generate higher levels of dopamine than the action of doing nothing. But if I give you a podcast to listen to while you walk, things change. This new state of stimulation becomes the status quo, and now going for a walk without listening to anything becomes boring. In a similar way, it happens in nature. When a lion smells prey or when a monkey observes fruit in a tree, our body releases energy when it senses the signal of a reward. For this reason, it is very difficult to get bored today because we consider the moderate stimulation that social media brings us as a superior price to tranquility. For this reason, moments of silence have become a signal to take out the cell phone and look for another reward. But the problem is that this system was developed over millions of years, for the time where the only objective was to improve our conditions and perpetuate the survival of the species. Its operation is not designed for the 21st century. This is the main problem with dopamine and variable reward systems that can be used for purpose other than evolutionary improvement. What began as a way to guarantee the survival of human beings has today become a marketing technique that has diverted our evolutionary path. The key to increasing dopamine and incentivizing behavior is uncertainty. The more predictable the reward, the less dopamine will be generated. Therefore, if after pressing the button we get an ice cream and then the macaroni appear again, we will spend more time pressing the button because we know that there is a very attractive reward that appears in a favorable and unpredictable way. In fact, knowing that there is a higher reward, more dopamine will be released when we don't get that result than when we do. Dopamine is what drives us towards our goals. Without it, there is no behavior or reward. The release of dopamine in the face of uncertainty is responsible for maintaining the functioning of these systems over time, since our brain does not stop generating this neurotransmitter in large quantities due to the fear that the reward will end, and thus we encourage action. And this precisely is what technology companies are using to reprogram our brain. Let's say dopamine is a two-sided coin. In one is the want system, which is what motivates us to action, and in the other is the like system, which makes us enjoy the reward and at the same time makes us feel satisfied, which is what stops the action. The want system is stronger and tends to pull on the like system, but the problem arises when these systems are modified in some way, as happens with addictions and drugs. Due to continued use, the want system becomes very sensitive to any signal that leads us to consume more, and the signals themselves become much more attractive. This explains why many people fall back into drugs after a long time of abstinence. The like system can also be easily modified through a reward that never fully satiates us. This way, we will never stop pressing that button in the hope of getting the ice cream. Just as our body can be satiated quickly, our mind has a much greater capacity. Dopamine not only drives us to seek food but also information and fun, and if you introduce a system of variable reward through the want and like systems, our brain has a hard time saying enough is enough, and then we fall into the trap. Dopamine spurs you into action, you get an unsatisfying reward, and because you don't like it at all, you act again and again. This is how addiction is born, and this is how we distance ourselves from our inner world. That is why today it is forbidden to be bored. That is why the television is always on, the music playing and the phone vibrating. Our reward and satisfaction system is completely atrophied, and we increasingly need more stimuli to satisfy ourselves. Of course, a walk in silence is not going to be enough. Today it is very easy to get away from boredom momentarily, but you have to take into account what that means. Anguish, fear, or boredom should not be seen as negative states, but as a revealing feeling. Through boredom, existence becomes aware of itself, and we are more present in the moment. This is how we improve our cognitive capacity and creativity. These states, like boredom, are a liberation and catharsis, and are positive when they reveal our own truth to us. When it is controlled, boredom is a powerful weapon of knowledge that allows our imagination to fly. Boredom should not be seen as an obstacle that we fight against, but as a part of our existence, as a part of our humanity. You have to be very bored to go out for a walk. You have to be very bored to start thinking. Y así, la siguiente pieza comienza.